What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I'm your host, Mason Kennahan, and today for Rivalry Week, we've got on Cam Sanderson. Cam, welcome to the show.
Oh, Mason, thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great show. Cowboys Commanders, 1 p.m. on Sunday. Cam, you're a Dallas Cowboys fan. It's been a interesting season, to say the least. Before we get into the game, what have been your overall thoughts on your expectations coming into the year and where this team is currently at? Because it's been a journey.
Yeah, it was weird. It was a bad off season, so I wasn't like too excited for the year. I still feel like they were a 10-win team. So
Right. Yeah.
it kind of felt like after that Saints game week 2, watching them completely implode and understanding, hey, this is maybe what we're going to expect a lot more this season, and the injuries. It's been really disappointing to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah. I had the Cowboys winning the division, and it's backfired. Even like before the injuries and everything that's happened, like it was not looking good. So let's just jump, I guess, right into the injury report for this week. For Dallas, no Marquise Bell again. I don't think he hasn't practiced his entire week. Beyond that, no Jake Ferguson. I would expect hasn't practiced the entire week. CD Lamb was a DNP on Thursday. We'll see the status of him, but I mean, as far as I know, I don't know if you know more, but I would expect him to play. I don't see him missing a game like this. But beyond that, it's been kind of everyone else. Zach Martin, no practice. Tyler Smith, no practice. Like the entire team is hurt. Who is not hurt
Yeah,
on this team? Who is
right.
not hurt on this team? That's kind of the actual question. Well, for Washington, coming off of a mini bye after the Thursday night game against Philly, Washington needed this mini bye. The entire team seemed to be hurt before the game at Lincoln Financial, and now you really just have Marshawn Lattimore's kind of the big one ruled out for Sunday's matchup, which was kind of expected, unfortunate but expected. But beyond that, this Washington team is a lot healthier than what this Dallas team is. Do you think that's going to play? I mean, of course, it'll play a role, but how much of a role do you think Washington's health versus Dallas's health will play in this one?
Yeah, I mean, Washington healthy versus Dallas healthy this year might have probably won by 2 scores. So, Dallas coming into this game without a lot of their star players. And I agree with you. I think CD will play, but, Jake Ferguson being out, I mean, that's a good target for Cooper Rush to have. And
Yeah.
now you got to, rely on Schoonmaker. And I know a lot of Dallas fans would agree with me. We're not too excited about that guy. So it's just there's not enough pieces around the field, and I think the way Washington's been playing this year, it really shouldn't be a problem for them. I'd expect you guys to. I
Yeah.
could probably turn the game off after a quarter.
Yeah. Yeah. This is definitely it's looking like it's going to be a pretty dominant game from Washington's side. Um, the offensive line, what? Oh, I guess we'll just jump right into kind of the Commanders' offense. We'll start with Commanders' offense against the Cowboys' defense. This Cowboys' defense has not really. I think the main thing has been the lack of turnovers. I would say. I know there's been some injuries here and there, but the lack of turnovers is what really stands out to me. Only 9 on the season so far, while last year Dallas had 26. And now, of course, you lose Dan Quinn. You're going to be going up against the former defensive coordinator in Dallas this weekend. What has been the key reason why you would think this defense just is not turning the ball over a ton?
In all honesty, I'm not 100% positive. I know we went without Deron Bland for a lot of the season, so it was kind of just Trayvon Diggs and then whoever else they could throw in there. But it really has been just a scheme switch up. It's not what we've seen the past few years. Mike Zimmer, it hasn't been too impressive. It's definitely been a decline, and I also feel like a part of the problem is there's not a lot of pressure being applied, and once again, that's injuries. DeMarcus Lawrence being out, Micah Parsons being out for so long, Sam Williams is out for the year. So you're losing all these star guys you had on the edge. There's not enough pressure applied to force these quarterbacks to make these bad decisions. So that's what I would have to say is why the turnovers are down. But
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. I mean, this Cowboys defense has been disastrous. They're pretty much dead last in run efficiency defensively. It's been the entire season. I saw the run defense was somehow one of the worst in pass defense as well, which usually is because passing is usually more efficient and stuff. So basically, this defense is bad all around. There's not really any bright spots with this, and you've got Micah Parsons off and on. Deron Bland. How long has Deron Bland been back since the injury?
I think it's 2 weeks now. Like, I think this will be his
Weeks,
3rd
yeah.
game back.
Yeah.
It's around that time. He might yeah, I think it's 2 weeks.
Yeah. So, I mean, Bland's just getting back into it again, and I mean, do you have any like bright spots in that secondary? Any young players that you're like, hey, I mean, I know we've got Diggs and Bland, but they have been great this season. Has there been anyone that really has stepped up in the secondary? Or anyone you're excited about?
Yeah, I think, Kalen Carson, I think is his name. He
Yeah.
kinda with Bland being out, stepped up when he needed to, but he just wasn't as impressive as I think as a lot of Cowboys fans wanted him to be.
Mhm.
Uh, I think the only guy when you look at this defense that stepped up is Overshown. I mean, that's the guy that's been lights out. He had to miss all last season because of his ACL tear, so seeing him back on the field now and just dominate, that's the guy. At this point, as a Cowboys fan, I'm not looking for wins. I wanna see these young guys, ball out, and he's been a guy that makes me want to go and watch the game. So
Mhm.
if there's a bright spot on that defense at all, it's him. But I wouldn't really even shout out anybody in that secondary.
Yeah, Carson was a guy who was going to go to the Senior Bowl last year, and then I think backed out in the last minute. But um, Overshown was someone I loved coming out of the draft 2 years ago. Again, his rookie season was cut short because of the injury, but now I mean he's definitely broken out at linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys, and I expect him to definitely be an integral piece of this defense for the next few years to come, and possibly even farther than that. So Overshown has been good. On the defensive line, can you explain to me what's happening with Mozzie Smith? Like, just explain what has happened over the last like two years for him.
Well, it's weird because Dan Quinn had him on this like weight loss plan, and so
Yeah.
like slimmed him down to play defensive tackle, which I've never even heard of that. It didn't really make any sense to me.
Yeah.
So I think Mike Zimmer's trying to beef him back up and get him back up there, but I don't know. They got Osa that fits there at the
Yep.
defensive tackle spot, and that's kind of the guy I think a lot of the Cowboys fans want to rally behind anyway.
Hmm.
I'd like to see Nazzy do something, but it's just it's not impressive. I don't know what it is about him. He just cannot get it done, and maybe next year is his year. I said that in the offseason this year about this coming year, so I don't know. I might just be
Yeah.
a little too positive on him, but I'd like to see him turn out. He's a first round pick. He's got to do
Hmm.
something for me, and I don't know. It's definitely been disappointing watching him.
Yeah, it's been fun seeing Cowboys Twitter react to like the 116th out of 116th PFF rank, or 116th out of 117th, and being excited all of that. So yeah, Mozzie Smith has been a pretty big disappointment this season for Dallas. But you mentioned also Odigizua. Odigizua has been one of my favorite players in the league for quite some time. He's a great run stopper for the Dallas Cowboys, and he's got a cool name too. I like his name a lot. So
Right. Right.
the guy is a very good player. On the edge again, DeMarcus Lawrence has kind of been hurt. Don't really know what the future is like. Is he a free agent this
Yeah,
offseason for
this is
Dallas?
the end of his contract, but he just came out and said, "Hey, this is not my last year. I'm not ending it on injury." I would be shocked if Dallas didn't re-sign him, but I also would have said that about Tyron Smith around this time last year.
Mhm.
So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But I'd expect him to be a Cowboy next year.
Yeah, yeah. Lawrence definitely his production has kind of declined recently, but
Oh, yeah.
mostly because of the injury, getting older. Micah Parsons has, I mean, he's been good, but he hasn't like he can't do everything, and like the defense overall is just so bad that it's he can't do everything pretty much. But let's go to the Washington offense. The Cowboys defense is pretty bad, but the Washington offense has been the complete opposite. One of the best offenses in the league this season overall. But in the last few weeks, we have started seeing this collapse that we have seen multiple times for Kliff Kingsbury over the years. What is your confidence? What are your thoughts on Kliff Kingsbury as a coordinator, as a play caller, as a head coach? What are your thoughts on him and like his midseason collapses?
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about this yesterday when you mentioned doing this podcast, and it's like you guys are getting to that point where if he was gonna collapse, it's coming right around the corner.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know though, because the offense has just felt like it's been so dominant, and I'm not locked in watching Commanders games really, but
Mhm.
it feels like just watching them perform and seeing how they're performing against teams, it just feels like it's on another level. Like I don't think I saw a Cardinals offense really playing at this level that I felt confident in them every week. But I mean, with a guy like Jaden Daniels in that receiving group, you got I don't sit back and think, oh, I don't know if the Commanders are going to get it done this week. So It's gonna be interesting because you mentioned Kliff Kingsbury, but also Dan Quinn. The past few
Yeah.
years as defense coordinator has had a collapse, and you've watched the defense get significantly worse as the year goes on. So both these
Yep.
guys are pretty bad on the second half of the season, historically throughout their career. So that's what is going to be interesting to watch with you guys. But I just don't see it happening. I mean, the Commanders have just been so dominant the whole time. I don't know. I can't count him out, and I don't think it's going to turn that way this year.
Yeah. I would say that's good that you brought up about Dan Quinn because I forgot about that his defense have gone worse in the second half. But for Cliff, I'm gonna read this quote because he was asked about uh his second half collapses this week. He said, I would have to see what you're talking about historically, references, but I don't have any plans to do anything to break that trend that I know of. I would have to see what years you're talking about. And then he says, he jokingly says, I was thinking about doing triple option. Is that what you're thinking? We're going to do what we do. So, I mean, he kind of dodged the question, really, or kind of like, yeah, kind of dodged the question. But for Cliff, the last few weeks have definitely not been as great as the first seven. Since week 8, this offense has been middle of the pack in a lot of different categories. Now they've gone up against better defenses, and that may be a part of it. Gone up against Philly. They kind of struggled against Baltimore as well. But I mean, is that because of Jane Daniels when he went down in that Panthers game? Dan Quinn and Kliff Kingsbury, I don't know if you've seen it, but they've been very weird, I would say, about Jane Daniels' injury. They've kind of said, "Oh, yeah, he's not injured. Don't really know what you're talking about." So they've kind of denied Jane has been injured the last few weeks, and he's 100% healthy. But you can still kind of tell with his accuracy that and like the heat pack that he was wearing. I know Jane said, "Oh, that heat pack was just so I could stay warm." I don't really know if that's the entire reason. But I mean, the injury has definitely affected him over the last few weeks. And even though Dan Quinn and Cliff might say otherwise, I definitely think that could be a reason. Not only that this offense has gotten worse, but Cliff Kingsbury's offenses historically rely on mobile quarterbacks. The mobile quarterbacks get banged up. Is that why the offense kind of declines? That could be a theory. So Washington's offense in recent weeks has definitely not played well. Now, the things that they have done well though is definitely because of Jane Daniels. What have been your thoughts on Jane Daniels, and what were your thoughts going into the draft? I don't know how much you looked at quarterbacks because Prescott was kind of the guy for Dallas, but what are your thoughts on Jane Daniels and where he sat within the quarterback class last year?
Yeah, I was a fan of Daniels. I feel like it was weird because it was hard watching him because he just shot up throughout the rankings, and all of a sudden, hey, it
Right.
looks like he's going to be the number 2 overall pick. But I kind of felt the same way about Daniels that I felt about CJ Stroud. I was like, I think this is a guy that can come out here and dominate. But I was a little bit more nervous for Daniels than Stroud. I didn't really know how his game would translate to the NFL. And I also felt like that last second, like, push up to the top of the charts was
Mhm.
kind of throwing me off. Like, should he be over Drake May? Should he be up here right now?
Yep.
Can he start day one? But
Yep.
I mean, watching him play, any doubt that anybody ever had has to be gone because he has played like an NFL quarterback. And I mean, that has to be exciting for you, I know, to get a franchise guy
Yes.
because it's been so long since y'all have had that. So
Mhm.
I mean, I look at him, and even as a Cowboys fan, I'm supposed to hate y'all, but I just love that guy so much. He's so fun
Yeah.
to watch.
Yeah, Jane has really been fun to watch. It's definitely brought energy back to this fan base that over the last few years has either dealt with Taylor Heineke, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Carson Wentz, Garrett Gilbert as the starting quarterback at times. So um, it's definitely a nice breath of fresh air to actually have an answer at that position. Now, I definitely think the second half of the season is going to be crucial into his progression because one of the concerns about Jane was his his like reliability of I know he's never really missed a game when he was at LSU, but he took a lot of big hits and he's taken some big hits so far this season as well. And of course, he's pretty much had to exit the entire game because of the injuries. He's definitely been affected by them. How will he hang up hang up for the rest of the season? Is going to be crucial for Washington's offense. So, any other thoughts on this side of the ball before we switch sides? Washington's offense, Dallas defense.
Oh, no, I don't got anything. I don't wanna talk
Yeah.
about Dallas's defense, I can promise you that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine. Now let's switch sides. So Cowboys offense now against this Washington defense. At quarterback, you think like Cooper Rush, Trey Lance, NFL draft. Where's your kind of thoughts right now on Dallas's offense, and you kind of just want to forget about it, similar to the Cowboys defense right now?
It's weird, it's like it felt like that if anybody was gonna take care of it, it was gonna be the offense, and, losing Dak I've mentioned this a lot. I've kinda lost my interest in even watching the Cowboys not having Dak on the field. It's just hard to even care. Cooper Rush ball is not exciting. I would like to see a little bit of Trey Lance, but I just can't. And then the backfield's just pitiful. I mean, Rico Dowdle is a good running back, but he'd be a lot better if he was running back too behind a solid guy. And you got, big old Zeke Elliott out there running for you. It's just everywhere you look on that offense, it's pitiful. The wide receiver core is just nothing now. It's just CeeDee Lamb. You're without Jake Ferguson. The O line is pitiful. I mean, it's just there's not one piece of that offense that I look at and I'm like, "Man, I'm excited to see what happens here." Like, I'm not. I'm so over it. It's just so bad.
Yeah, I'm looking at like the ESPN depth chart for the Cowboys, and you know how they have the red like out cues, IR. This isn't like half of this offense is just has like some sort of injury destination right now. You've got one, two, three, four. So you got 6 players on injured reserve. You've got like Tyler Smith questionable, Lepke's questionable, Ferguson's questionable. Like half of this offense is all injured, somewhat to the defense, but like it is kind of taking the same amount of hits as the Cowboys defense. Um, what you mentioned the run game with Dowdle and Elliott that has been managed very poorly from McCarthy to well, first off, actually, what have been your thoughts on like Mike McCarthy? Because I think you said in the I've heard you say in the past that like you think he's a good coach and he wins in the regular season. He hasn't been able to win in the playoffs, but he's had a lot of regular season success for Dallas. So what are your thoughts on him and the future of him in Dallas?
Yeah, it's weird because I probably one of the biggest Mike McCarthy defenders, and I've been like
Yeah.
that the past few years. I've gotten in arguments, debates about it. And
Mhm.
last year, I really kind of felt like he solidified himself as a good head coach. He was the offensive play caller, and I mean, he put
Mhm.
Dak on MVP conversations.
Exactly. Hmm.
So it really felt like, hey, McCarthy is going to be good, but this season has been so bad, and I don't know what it is. Like, what has changed about his offensive play call? I don't know if it's you don't have Tony Pollard anymore. I don't know if it's because CD missed so much time during the offseason practicing, but the offense wasn't connecting, and it didn't feel like he had a way to make it work. So I would be his contract ends at the end of the year.
Yeah.
There's
Hmm.
no shot in my mind he gets another one. It
Yeah.
it's like it's weird because I don't know if I'm disappointed about that or not. Because I really, really did like him during his time in Dallas, but this year has just been so pitiful. I cannot imagine them offering him another contract.
Yeah. I mean, this Dallas offense has struggled a lot, especially after Prescott went down. The run game has been non-existent, which you cannot live with like a one-dimensional offense in the NFL these days. And I mean, the Cowboys offense has shown that they have the most giveaways in the league at 20, or tied for the most with the Raiders. But they have 20 giveaways so far this season. Now you could blame that on Cooper Rush throwing meatballs across the middle of the field or whatever. But like, I mean, this offense is not good. Now for the offensive line, it's kind of been little bit interesting to me because when the Cowboys' offensive line historically has been very good. A lot of capital is spent on that offensive line, and the development that Dallas has had in the past has been very good. But recently, I mean, they've had some injuries, players getting older. What are your thoughts on how Dallas has approached replacing these older veterans on this offensive line? And I mean, this year they've been pretty disappointing. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I was very upset about the first round pick getting Tyler Guyton.
Mhm.
I think that Tyler Guyton pick makes sense if you re-sign Tyron Smith and you let him sit behind him and you let him learn. But throwing him out there week 1 was never the answer for Tyler Guyton, and I'd have to assume 31 other franchises would agree with that. I never understood that start. Zach Martin completely declined. Terrence Steele getting that long-term contract. I know he came off that injury, but it's just been pitiful, man. He just really hasn't recovered, and I don't know. I mean, Tyler Smith, you have Tyler Smith. So, I
Mhm,
mean, that's something to look forward to, right? You have one
yeah,
of your 5 pieces for sure locked in, but
mhm,
I'm not excited. I think this is Zach Martin's last year, so you're already gonna have to fill in another hole. It's just it really feels like for the first time in my life as a Cowboys fan, everything's falling apart.
yeah,
And this is the first time that I can't even just rely on the O-line because that's not there anymore. It's just pitiful.
mhm,
There's nothing to really you could say this about every position on that team except for kicker. There's nothing to be excited about.
yeah, yeah, I mean, Cooper was it Beebe or Beebe? I should probably figure
Yeah,
it out, but,
right.
I mean, he's been solid, I thought. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't know if
he's
he's the answer, or you can say he's the answer yet at center, but I think he's like a young piece that you can continue to develop. What are your thoughts on him?
yeah, I'd give him some more time. He hasn't been bad at center. I mean, I'll give
Mhm.
him that. There's no complaints about how he's played. I've been okay with that, and especially I think we got him in the 3rd round,
Yeah.
so it was good value for a guy like that. I mean, I'm not sold on him completely. I want to
Mhm.
see how he plays. I mean, it's the same. It could be the same situation as Terrence Steele. I mean, Steele earned his contract that he got. He had a really
Yeah.
good season, and then stunk it up after that. So I'll give him some more time. He could absolutely fill that position, and him and Tyler Smith could be, like the Tyron Smith and Zach Martin of this O line for the next few years. But
Yep.
I'm not ready to, lock in on that take.
Mhm. Yeah, so, I mean, this Cowboys offense has been disastrous, but also what has been disastrous is this Washington defense, but not recently. Like, the first half of the season so far was pretty bad, but surprisingly, it has gotten better over the last few weeks for Washington. Now it's still bottom half in the league, but it's not the worst anymore. So that is improvement. Now, no Marshawn Lattimore for this week. I think Dan Quinn said he was optimistic that Lattimore might start practicing next week, as he has not practiced yet since we traded for him back in week 9, was it, or week 8, week 9. So we're now going to go into week 13 not knowing if Lattimore's going to play or not. But still, Mike Sanders still has done a great job on outside corner. The pass rush has been surprisingly good. How about Dante Fowler breaking out this year? What are your thoughts on first Dan Quinn taking all of these pass rushers and these defensive linemen from Dallas, and now Dante Fowler breaking out? What are your thoughts on that?
I genuinely like watching Dan Quinn go to the Commanders, and I I feel like the roles have switched because when that hire happened, I probably laughed in your face, but now I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah,
everybody,
you did.
yeah, you can laugh at me because it has been so good for you guys, and he stole all
Mhm.
those Dallas pieces, and so really when he was stealing those Dallas pieces, I was nervous to see how good that Commanders defense could play, knowing that. Quinn's had all these guys. Dante Fowler right now, that's great for him. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I don't know anything about that. But, I mean, seeing him bring all those guys that he is comfortable with and he knows and he's coached for the past few years, I felt confident you guys would be pretty solid on defense, but, I don't know, man. Dan Quinn, I don't know why he's turned it on all of a sudden and he's figuring it out, and I feel like I debated a lot of people in the offseason about how bad he was gonna be, and it was just a huge miss. It seems like he's been pretty good for you guys.
Yeah, so I mean, I was low on the Dan Quinn hire too. I had him as my like third guy, but like I had Ben Johnson and Mike McDonald as my top two, and there was like a good gap, and then it was Dan Quinn. So I wasn't completely. I didn't think he was going to be the worst option, but I mean, there was other guys I'd rather have than him. But he's definitely exceeded my expectations for sure. Dante Fowler this season is fifth in sacks in the league at 8.5. The guy
Wow.
is, and like most of it has come in the last month for some reason. So Fowler's been on an absolute tear for Washington. The secondary has not. The secondary has not been great. Beyond Mike Sanderson on the outside and Jeremy Chin, who's been playing more in the box recently. Uh, I mean, hopefully once Lattimore comes back, we'll have a better defense overall, and it'll kind of put everyone in that secondary back in the positions that they should be playing. But right now, especially with Benjamin St. Juste, I mean, Emmanuel Forbes hasn't even played in like the last month and a half or so. So I mean, it's been a pretty weak secondary overall. But this defense has been improving week on week, week after week, and I think they could definitely get a few turnovers against Cooper Rush on
Oh, yeah.
Sunday. So yeah, that's definitely going to be coming. Let's go to our final thoughts here. and score prediction. I'll let you go first here. What are your final thoughts? And if you got a score prediction, let me hear it.
I mean, final thoughts on this game. I think it's just going to be, what I expect every Cowboys game to be for the rest of the season. Like I mentioned to you earlier, I'll probably have it turned off after the first quarter. I expect this
Yeah.
team to dominate, and it's good. You mentioned the offense seems like they've kind of struggling right now, but the good thing about playing a team like the Cowboys is this is just a big morale booster. I mean, you can
Mhm.
dominate on both sides of the ball and just take care of a team, especially when it's the Cowboys. I mean, who doesn't like beating
Yeah.
them? So I think this is going to be a really big win for you guys. I both morally and like just by the score alone. I'd expect y'all dominating on both sides of the ball. If I had to give you a score prediction, I'd go like 38-10. You know, I
Damn.
I I
Wow.
think it's gonna be pretty bad. And I think Dan Quinn's gonna do what Dan Campbell did. He's gonna, you know, foot on the gas pedal, score as much as he can, just take care of his old team. And it is what it is. I'll root for the young guys in Washington for sure.
Yeah, my final score prediction here: Commanders 30, Cowboys 13. I gave you a little bit more offensively there, but yeah, I think this Washington game is definitely and should be a big morale booster for the Commanders. You've got a pretty easy schedule coming up. You got Dallas this week, Tennessee next week, and then I gotta check. But next two games should both be wins. After that, the Saints. So like these next three games, Washington could go 3-0. And these next three would be huge after the first losing streak actually in the Dan Quinn era, losing two games back to back, Steelers and Eagles. So that'll pretty much wrap this one up. Cam, where can people follow you and all that?
Yeah, I mean Cam Sanderson 88 on Twitter. That's where I'm
Yeah.
at. I'm not really on much other social media, but that's where I stay active. Um, strictly Cowboy stuff though. So
Yeah. Yeah, you can follow you can tune into Cowboys Twitter over there. So that'll do it for today's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. The next episode will be out on Monday, recapping the game. With that being said, yeah, that'll do it for this week's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. See you guys next one. Peace.